Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down Michigan. Spring practice is just a few weeks away. We got Von Lozon on the line from Maize n Brew of SB Nation. The defensive line, one of the better units in the nation. I'm just talking collectively over the past 3 to 4 years, as the front seven has been in the secondary. Actually, the entire Michigan defense, if you look at the standard traditional stats or the advanced metrics, since Harbaugh took over, has been one of the best units in the nation. People will point to the letdowns against Ohio State in particular, of course, the big 62 points and 56 the last 2 years. And so you point to defensive line because it has to start there in regards to stopping elite offenses. And as you mentioned before we started to record, specifically defensive tackle is going to be key in regards to getting this team ready for 2020.
Yeah, I think defensive tackle is a huge position moving forward for Michigan. They really struggled there a season ago. They expected a guy like Donovan Jeter to step up. He didn't really do that much of last season. Carlo Kemp was the mainstay on the defensive line. He'll be back, so getting his experience back is really huge. But moving forward, they're going to need some more production out of guys like Chris Hinton, who was a 5-star in the 2019 class. He played sparingly in his true freshman season. I didn't really get it going until toward the end of the season against Ohio State. He had a pretty good game. So we'll definitely see if he can step up and maybe take a starting position away from another more experienced guy. Mozzie Smith is another guy that was pretty highly ranked in-state guy. He didn't really play all that much last season, so he's going to be a redshirt this year. So defensive tackle is going to be a really important position for Michigan in 2020. See if they can get a more collective pass rush going with guys like Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson on the edges. They both return this year, with Paye being in his senior season, Hutchinson being a true junior. So the edges are pretty secured. It'll be interesting to see how the positions of defensive tackle play out in the spring. I would expect a guy like Hinton to get a lot more playing time in 2020. They just consistent with getting to the quarterback if they want to compete, like you had mentioned, with the Ohio States and Penn States of the world, especially in the Big Ten. These are teams that they've been struggling with on and off, especially Ohio State. But Penn State, it's like every other year they're either able to give them a good whooping or they get whoops themselves. So we'll definitely see if they can get more consistency along the defensive line in 2020.
Hutchinson with 10 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks last year. If you watch any Big Ten football, you're familiar with Kwity Paye. He was all over the field in the opponent's backfield, making more plays from that factor than anybody else for the Maize and Blue at 12.5 sacks or 12.5 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks. But you mentioned tons of question marks in regards to productivity at D tackle. Carlos Kemp, the most productive player there, coming back with 40 tackles and 4.5 tackles for loss. Got Von Lozon on the line from Maize n Brew, talking about Michigan football and Jim Harbaugh and the crew ready to go to spring practice. And we talk defensive line. Let's talk offensive line with 4 starters gone from one of the best units in the Big Ten. You got your right tackle back after 1 full season of play out of him. Your thoughts about an offensive line? I don't know if you've got a whole lot of thought right now. You're going to have to check out spring practice and see what gets put together. But I got to think, based on recruiting rankings that are typically anywhere from 7 to 12 in the nation under Harbaugh, that the prospects are pretty good.
Yeah, they've got a lot of guys in the waiting to deliver with some starting roles here. I think Jalen Mayfield coming back, obviously, the right tackle. He's the lone experienced guy, really, on the offensive line. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. So, yeah, after a full season of starting, I would imagine that he secures his role at right tackle. But it'll be interesting. A lot of people were surprised that Cesar Ruiz ended up leaving. He was the center for the last few seasons for Michigan. I would expect a guy like Zach Carpenter to replace him. He is going to be a redshirt freshman. He may be young, but he, from what coaches have been saying, they've been raving about him. I think he's got a real good chance to start when they open the season against Washington in September. It'll be interesting to see who secures the right guard spot. Maybe Nolan Rumler, another redshirt freshman who was very highly ranked out of high school. Left guard, I would imagine a guy like Chuck Filiaga, who's been with the program for numerous seasons. He's just been waiting behind Ben Bredesen, who was a 4-year starter at Michigan. I would imagine he probably takes the left guard spot or maybe right guard, just depending on how they want to align things. But it'll be pretty interesting to see all of this play out. Left tackle will be another interesting position to watch moving forward. Ryan Hayes is probably the favorite as of right now. He is also in his 3rd season, so he'll be a redshirt sophomore. He is also an in-state guy. He and Jalen Mayfield were in the same recruiting class. So he'll probably lock down the left tackle a spot to start, and then maybe have a guy like Carson Barnhart push him for playing time as well. He is going to be a redshirt this year, and he had some playing time last year in garbage time at left tackle. So there's going to be a big competition at pretty much every spot on the offensive line, and Ed Warner's got his work cut out for him, that's for sure.
Always a great conversation with Von Lozon from Maize n Brew. Please check him out and the rest of the staff there covering Michigan athletics with March Madness right on us and spring practice as well. Von, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks as always, man. Appreciate you having me on.